So what if confidence is the only thing that you're missing in order to accomplish what you really want to accomplish, do what you really want to do? If it's expand your business, expand your network, what if confidence was the only thing you were missing? What would you do? How would you act? So a lot of the fears and anxieties that we all face, a lot of times they're not real. And let me give you an example. So think about a baby. Think about a baby that's just hasn't learned to walk yet, and they start to crawl, and then they start to pull up, and then they take their first step. Now, if you look at that situation with the baby that doesn't know how to walk yet, they are very, very curious, naturally curious, which we all have, and they all have this innate confidence. How do you know that? Well, look at a baby that starts to take its first step, very curious, very positive, if you will, curious. And then they take that first step. And yes, they fall along the way. Even if they get hurt, bump their heads, and they cry, they don't let that stop them. They quickly get up and try again, right? It's like they have no memory or no fears or anxieties that kick in that prevent them from trying to get up and take a first step, another first step. So looking at it from that perspective, confidence and being curious is something that is innately, born within all of us. So I say that because many, many fears, many, many worries, many, many anxieties, it's like brought on by society, things we see on YouTube, things we see on TikTok, things we see on television. I remember talking to a good friend of mine, and she was talking about her grandmother and how full of life her grandmother was and the life she lived, which was, man, no fear. I mean, she went for whatever she wanted. And I made a comment that, gosh, your grandmother, she just had no fear. And I said, and she also told me, she said, yeah, she said she was not triggered by anything really. Life really didn't trigger her. Situations didn't trigger her. Experiences didn't trigger her. And we were talking about, why is that? And, I think it makes a lot of sense, because what she said was, if you looked at the age of her grandmother and you looked at the age that she was when she passed and the life she lived, there wasn't many movies that her grandmothers saw because of her age and because of when televisions came out and movies got to be very popular. So there wasn't a lot of pre-programmed, if you will, anxieties and fears, and where your mind could just be like a runaway train. So she just wasn't triggered by life and society. But one of the main differences is she didn't have access to a lot of things that was going on, as far as scary movies, things to fear, all of these things. So, and I say that because then I was talking to one of my good friends who has a child that's about 3 years old, and he's trained in our technology, and I was telling him this story, and he said, yeah, and he said, one of the things we notice with our daughter is we've sat down before and watched a movie on her level, if you will, and he said they noticed that even though it was a child's movie, sometimes there can be scary characters in that movie. And he said that she would say, no, 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 I don't want to see that, because it was triggering her, if you will, and scaring her. And so they realized and started really, really looking at the movies that they would show her, because she was not interested in basically having those triggers in her space. And he said that as they ran that process, and as she's lived life and a little bit older, she's much more willing now to experience. She didn't have a lot of fears, and now she's much more willing to maybe take a peek at something that might used to have scared her. Whereas in the beginning, she shut it down and said, no, I don't want that, because it was triggering her. She didn't want to be triggered. Very smart if you look at that from a child's perspective. So I'm using this example because confidence is something that we all have. If you look at just the one thought of, I can do anything, before you go over to the other side of things that could happen, things that might happen, things you don't know how to handle, versus coming from the viewpoint of having the confidence to do anything, handle anything that comes up, man, that opens up a whole new world for you being able to take the next step, expand your business, get out of this comfort zone box and get into a much larger box, and just really, really live life from a whole different level. So think about your biggest accomplishments that you've made in life, your biggest accomplishments that you've made in life. And then look at the things you want to accomplish in your future and connect in to that natural confidence that you have within yourself. If you're like me and many of the people that I've talked to over my life since I've been in personal development, many times I have made the mistake, and I still do it, but a lot less. When I'm trying to look at where I want to go and the things I want to accomplish, many, many times I get caught up in where I want to be. Where I want to be is over here, is over there out in the future, instead of looking at where I've come from and all the things that I have accomplished and overcome to where I am today. And if I look at it from that point of view, you're talking about my confidence really, really excelling and accelerating. It's unbelievable. So, and that's the right process. Look at where you come from, all the accomplishments and everything you've ever achieved, overcome, obstacles, problems you had to handle, situations you had to confront and move forward. And just that alone just kind of like solidifies that innate confidence that we all have, versus where you want to be. You actually end up bypassing a lot of wins and all those great things that you've accomplished that builds confidence. So in the next few weeks, we're going to talk a lot about this area. So have a great week. Notice that innate confidence you have. And if you need to, look at where you come from and look at all the things you've accomplished in life. And that will enhance your confidence. See you next week.